Open to be Agile, podcast episode number 7. This is part 2 of the mini series on Agile is not all that bad, or is it? Welcome back, my Agile friends. If you did not listen to part 1 of this mini series, I would strongly encourage you to, because we dove into why Agile is getting a bad rap in the industry today. Today's episode, we will go into some ways you can focus on changing that perception and potentially a different viewpoint for you, or quite possibly something you could take away and try where you are today. Feel free to share this with those you've encountered that don't understand Agile or have been resistant basically due to bad experiences, because this episode is surely going to shed some light on what Agile is and was really meant to be. One thing I have to say before you begin listening to this episode is, hang tight. Wait for it. Wait for it. Because of how impactful this episode is on the root of Agile and agility, we wrap this episode up with a mega mic drop of epic proportions. You won't want to miss this, but you can't just forward to it. You have to listen in order for it to really have the full effect. Enjoy the show.
What are some things you would do, Isaac, to thwart some of this? Or what's some advice that you would give to some of these people that have had a bad Agile experience that they could see some sort of health with Agile or they could buy back into it? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I really think that if I had a magic wand, right, that I could just wave that would magically change something, right? You can change a thing. What thing do you want to change? The thing I would want to change is, I think, what most organizations, not just companies, so for-profit, but also what most organizations, even nonprofits, what they value. Because I think for a long time, we have valued certain things, right, that have arguably made us have a very effective economy, right? Getting it to where we are today, we've seen successes, and we understand the market punishes those who don't respond the way the market wants to. But I think that there is a shift happening from pure production being what's valued to creating the environments for really innovation and teamwork. Because, and I think this got mentioned earlier, and I think this really is it, the world has become far more complex than it has been in the past. And so in the past, when we were creating simple things, and when I say simple, I mean things that were mechanical, right? Things that were repeatable, that were the same. You just punch them out on a press. I think in the past, those things were able to be, we can focus on production, right? If I'm rolling out a car, even though there's a lot of parts to that car, it might be complicated. It's not really complex in the sense that it's adapting and changing. We would machine parts and we would punch them out, and we would simply measure the production, right? The more cars we get out that work, or the more widgets we create, the more we can sell, right? As long as the demand is there in the market, and therefore the more money we can make. And I think what's happening now is, as the world shifts to a more knowledge worker economy, what's happening is you need people to come and engage in the process. It's no longer satisfactory for people to come in and be mindless drones, and just to take orders and say, just tell me what to do. In fact, I've worked before with a team where there were members on the team who were developers and literally just said, I don't need to come to these team meetings. I don't need to know what you were doing. I just want you to put a piece of paper, an email, or a Word doc, put it in my hands that says, 1, do this, 2, do this, 3, do this, and I'll do it. And while that might have worked back in the days when we're making physical things and, hey, I'm going to write up these instructions for you, do it 3,000 times as fast as you can. Okay. What we're doing today is solving people problems. And what I mean by people problems, if you look at what we're doing in the market, we are trying to solve things that allow people to interact with products differently, hardware differently, software differently, solving the problems of their daily commutes differently, interacting with the world around them, the Internet of Things. We are solving people problems. And if you disengage someone's mind and say, simply do A, B, or C, what happens is you lose sight of the goal, which is the person. And what we've discovered in software development is that people have changing desires, right? I don't know how many times I've seen teams where someone has come and said, I want A, B, and C. And you go and build it and you go back to them and they go, ooh, I didn't actually want B and C. What I really wanted was D and E. Can you make that happen? And you're like, you just told me this is what you wanted. But yet as soon as you see it, you change your mind. And so we as companies, as organizations, profit, nonprofit, we need to be responsive to the needs of people. And you can't do that if your people, the people on your side, have turned off not only their brains, but have turned off themselves, their emotional being. If they have turned themselves off, they are not going to respond to the people you're trying to serve. And it's like, imagine a situation, if you will, just to put this in perspective, imagine a situation, there's this, young girl riding her bicycle down the sidewalk, she's riding away and she's very happy, has her helmet on, and the bike falls over and she scrapes her knee and she starts crying. And then imagine this person walks by her without responding and ignores her completely. And as he walks by, he's muttering to himself, must go to the store, must go to the store, must go to the store, must go to the store. And he walks by her. We would go, how dare you for walking by this sudden need? Now, when that man started out to go to the grocery store, he didn't plan on stopping and helping a poor girl who fell down on her bike and scraped her knee and is crying. But you know what? Life changed in front of him. And if he's just got to go to the store, got to go to the store, got to go to the store, and he ignores the person's need, it's heartless, it's a machine, it's cruel, it's non-human. And we don't like that. Customers don't like that. Donors to nonprofits don't like that. So what we need to do is we need to create organizations that can respond to the people they're serving with their emotions and their whole self. And you can't do that if you simplify. Your job is just to show up, punch your clock, and create 1,000 widgets as fast as you can. We can't value production more. We need to value people and our service to them. And by that, I think the market will reward those companies and those organizations that focus on that.
And Mark, any what advice or how we can make this better from your perspective? I know you are training people how to work differently pretty regularly, so I'm sure you have some really good ideas.
Well, first off, Isaac's hit it right on the head there with what he was talking about with this idea of really try to put the people first. And I think the people in that aspect too is our customers. And so when I kind of think about what we're trying to do, to me, look at how many layers are between the person delivering the value and the person consuming it. So that customer.
Absolutely.
You know what? If you look at that and you have, well, I got a product owner, and then that product owner works with a product manager, and that product manager works with account rep, and all of a sudden, me as a developer, there's like 4 layers between me and my customer. No wonder I'm disconnected from what I'm doing. And I'd say for the people listening to this, sit down real quick, pause the podcast, think about how many layers are there between a person delivering value and your customer. If there's more than one, that's why Agile isn't working for you. That's my perspective on that. That is what is causing that. Because guess what? Those people delivering value, they lose their essentially tie to the value. If you make it so that team is working directly with the customer, just like directly with the business who's consuming this, all of a sudden now they have a stake in terms of what they're trying to deliver. They're accountable now to the business value. They're not accountable to stories. They're not accountable to features. They're accountable to say, hey, this guy's got a problem. How do I help solve that problem? And I think that's, to me, one of the biggest things is looking at that, saying, how many layers do we have here between us and the people who use this? And if you could take a look at that, you can understand that, you can all of a sudden then start, again, regardless of whether you're using Scrum or Kanban or whatever, those are all great sets of tools. But if you're not close to your customer, those tools aren't going to make you go fast. Those tools aren't going to make you deliver the right kind of stuff. You can become really good at them, but ultimately you won't see the value because you have this gigantic gap between what you're trying to do and the problem you're trying to solve. So that's to me kind of the biggest, what thing, if you were to do something, that would be the biggest thing I'd recommend.
It's like whisper down the lane. I actually have an exercise that I do to try and demonstrate that gap where I'll take somebody and I'll put them in a different room and I'll give them a requirement. in the form of a user story. It's got a whole lot of very similar sounds to it, colors, lines, and then I take that person and then I'll move that person and they have to basically translate it to another person in another room. And then the other person will come out of that room and go into another room. And I do that same thing, product director to a product line manager to a product owner. And then on that third one, that person has to go into the last room with a team of people and get those people using markers and construction paper to create this vision that I originally had with the first statement that I made, and it always comes out with all different variations because there's such a gap.
Well, think about it too. You've got the latency in there too. So it goes right back down to that problem where if I'm working directly with them, that latency is reduced. It goes back to Isaac's example. If I'm walking down the street and I see this little girl fall down, I'm not having to go check with my, if I'm walking down the street, I have to go check with my wife. Hey, honey, can I make this stop here real quick? I guess help this little girl, and she's got to go check with somebody else or something like that. I can react right then and there based off my situation. And so the latency and the understanding, boy, those things get lost so easily.
And then here's the other thing. Is it somebody that's at the top of that chain at the product director level? Is that person representing 1 million people, or are 1 million people feeding that person? Because you always have that of, I know what they want, so this is what we're going to build what they want. And that could be tricky too, because did we really listen to the people, or are we listening to one person that's trying to represent the people because this person knows better?
Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things I think about too with that is that, you think about these companies like an Amazon or something, they're so large and their customer base is so big. And so people might say, it's like, well, how can I get close to my customer? Right? There's just so many of them. That's why companies like Amazon, Facebook, they run a ton of experiments. They do them constantly, and they're seeking small bits of feedback to essentially sense and adapt. And so I know a lot of people I've talked to, they will say, oh, I'd love to get closer to my customer, but I just simply can't. Just because there's just so many of them, or there's no one person I can go to. And so, well, at that point, go run some experiments and actually see what the environment does when you do that. Make them small experiments so you can kind of feed back. I think that's another thing that's lost within the Agile perspective, is that we don't necessarily experiment anymore. We don't think about what's this thing I can put out there, validate whether it's going to move me in the right direction or not.
I took a class in New York, and a former Amazon user experience VP, directors, and it was super, super eye-opening. They truly live, breathe, and focus on the art of personas. They identify these customers by age, by income, by house, by race, by likes, they are so complex with their personas and who they're trying to hit with that target audience and how they build. I've never seen anything like it my entire life. Blew my mind because we had a killer 4.5 star app in the Apple store. And it's like we came into that in a very egotistical way of like, what, 4.5 out of 5 stars? Our app's it was the best sports app out there. And boy, they were able to shoot holes through our app and connect us to issues that users were having, understanding certain parts of our product that maybe we just weren't seeing or overlooking, or we didn't do enough focus groups on. And we went back with a fresh mindset of, man, we got to connect with these users more. We got to understand these personas. We got to get this right.
I got to tell you too, just tying back to what Mark was saying, and you just said a word there, I think, Jeff, that we could go off and spend an entire podcast talking about, but that concept of ego, right? And I think what we often do is when you get those layers of insulation that Mark was talking about and you're separated from your customer, it's pretty easy to pat yourself on the back and say, we are the best in the world. We're the best of breed. We're delivering on time. We're making our customers thrilled, because you can get a warped version of feedback from those customers. And like you said, with your whispering game, like the more separation between, when feedback kind of comes back, it's going to be more broken up. It's not going to be accurate. I'll tell you, as back in my day when I was a developer, I had an eye-opening experience to feedback from a customer where we built a tool and we actually had a usability lab that we could take the customers into, and it was like an interrogation room. It had one-way glass. You'd put the customer on the other side and they would interact with the tool, and there were cameras. You could watch their face, you could watch their hands, you could see their screen, and we would sit on the other side of the glass and we would observe and take notes for things to improve. And I will never forget this one experience where I had built this great UI, right? King of the world. I knew what it needed to do. I built it and I knew it worked. It met the requirements. It had everything it needed. And so I went into that session on top of the world. Boy, I've got this thing in the bag. I did what I was supposed to do. I hit my timeline. And you know what happened? The user gets partway in and stopped and was stumped. And so the person running the lab experiment said, "Tell me what you're thinking." And the person goes, "Well, I really want to refresh this feature, or I want to pull this report." I forget what the exact function was. And no lie, the button was on the screen. And so if you imagine this scene, there's a person sitting in a room with the UX lab tech, and they're scratching their head. They're confused. I really want to do this, and I feel like I should from this screen, but I don't know how to. I don't understand it. Transition to the other side of the glass. I was almost banging
Pounding on the window,
screaming at them. It's right in front of you. I was pointing at the monitor. Everyone else in the room thought it was hilarious. I was pointing at the monitor going, "It's right there. Click it." But you know what came out of that? I realized it didn't matter how brilliantly I thought I had done or not. That customer could not perform the function they needed to. And you know what hit me that day as I walked out usability lab? That was on me. And I'll tell you, that feedback hurt. My ego hurt when I left, because I wanted to be mad and call that user foolish and say they didn't do their job. But who built the tool? I did. And when I had that clear line of feedback, just imagine, go back to what Mark said, all those layers were taken away. I got to sit on the other side of the glass and watch the real customer really use my tool. And it was humbling, because I thought I'd built it great, but I hadn't. I'd missed it. And so a lot of times as I'm working with teams, I can see that kind of sneak in. We did the requirements. We delivered what they wanted, and the customer's over there pulling their hair out. And it's like, okay, there's a disconnect here, because you're patting yourself on the back as the team, but the customer is ready to throw their computer against the wall. There is something wrong with this. And it's that pride, it's that ego that can blind you. And if you're not getting clear feedback, you might not be humbled. And you know what? If you don't allow yourself to be humbled and you realize, you're not the best that the world has ever seen, before too long, you're not going to have customers, right? Or they're going to just silently go to your competition, and you're going to find yourself all alone with your perfect product that no one uses.
I think that ego part is huge with this, because a lot of times when you have even with teams, that case, you think about, well, I'm following all the process, I'm doing all the steps, doing the demos, I'm doing all these things, but you never have the right people in there. And so it's actually like an ego inflation session. Like, oh, I say this, they say that. And oh, cool. Hey, we're all patting ourselves on the back. We're all feeling really good about it. But ultimately in the end, the people who actually are going to use this thing aren't there. And so our ego just continues to inflate and inflate and inflate. And then it gets out there, and then all of a sudden we either say at that point, it bursts to the point where we say, well, it's them, not us. And we just move on. Or we have to your situation like yours, which I think is more and more rare, Isaac, is that, boy, we need to fix ourselves. And I think it plays out this idea is why we want fast feedback loops is so that honestly, from a human perspective, we can help move past the ego. We're getting feedback all the time. We're not inflating this balloon as we're going. All of a sudden now we're constantly getting feedback, and we're able to move past that ego perspective.
And that adaptation, if you listen to that feedback, if you have that clear line to that feedback, you can respond quickly, you can respond intuitively, and you can respond correctly, right? Mm-hmm. I think when you put someone in a room, or you put someone seeing a problem, and with a heart to serve, you got to go in with a heart to serve. I think that we believe that our teams, when they see the problem, can actually respond and do it right and do it quickly. And Jeff, this brings back to our big topic. Why is Agile not working? Is there's this sense of let's put the ceremonies in there. Everybody block your calendars for these meetings. We're going to do these things. But it's like, but what are we really trying to do here, right? Why are we going about this? And without that sense of this is what we're trying to accomplish, you do the ceremonies, you do the framework, you do the whatever it is, the flavor that you're assigned, you check all the boxes. But if your customers are still upset, if your delivery times are still down, and if your teams are getting wiped out, if you're getting all the same negative responses, if nothing is changing, then what is it that you're actually doing? Right? And I think that's where people get frustrated, because I changed, I'm checking all the boxes, I did all the things, it's just not working. And I think what we're talking about here is there's got to be a sense of what are you trying to do, and then being intelligent about how do I go about doing that, really honoring the values, right, is really what it's about, honoring the values of this transition, so that I believe I'll see the results. If I put the values first, the results are going to follow it, and not getting lost in the mechanics of what it is we're doing.
Very true. Very true. I wrote down some notes, and one of the things that I had in the notes was the word ego in itself. And we talk about agile adoption, not necessarily just a disconnect from the team and the people to the users or who's going to be ultimately engaging with the product, but it's also that same got to check the ego at the door internally to make agile transformations work. It's, yeah, we want this. I'm sitting at the top in a hierarchical infrastructure. I want this. But you know what? The first thing that I would want to do is, like, if I went to seek a mechanic for this F-150 Velociraptor I have, or say I have one of the best computers, one of these Alienware computers, and something starts going funky with it. I'm not savvy enough to crack the hood of that thing. I want to take it to the best techie I know to fix this. That concept applies everywhere. Your refrigerator breaks. You want to find the best repair person you can to get that refrigerator back up and running. Your AC in your house goes down and it's 110 degrees outside. You want to find the best HVAC person you can to get you up and running with the least headache possible. The bottom line is, I think there's a detachment with ego and transformation in the workplace that let's find the best agile mechanic we can possible. Let's find the best agilist, like somebody we could trust and confide in, like either one of you two guys that I'm on the call with, or any of our other leaders that I have a lot of confidence in. But you know what? I'm good at CEO of the business, running the business, making the connections, looking at the P&Ls, working with our accounting team, working with our legal team. But you know what, Mark? I need you to just lead. I need you to do all the things that I know you're capable of doing to help us get this transformation there, and I'll support it anywhere I can. It's a complex adaptive system. Things are going to go off the rails a little bit. We're going to have problems. Even in a utopian world, we're going to face problems. So let's focus on solving those specific problems. Here's the diagnosis. What prescription can we give it? And I'll support you any way that I can. Let's just keep the lines of communication open. Mark, you're my expert. And you know what? I want 360-degree visibility. I want to hear from the people. I want you to hear from the people. Let's change this culture together. A lot of times it doesn't happen that way. The second the one wheel comes off the bus and a problem's faced, somebody else rises up in a dictatorial, I know how to solve this. This isn't going right the way that it needs to be. And all of a sudden it becomes panic and chaos, and somebody else's ego wants to, Mark's trying to play peacekeeper here. And it's like, wow, we're all out of sorts. We lacked alignment. We lost our North Star. We don't have a real sense of understanding that there's problems that we need to solve, and we need to solve them together. But it comes down to, I'm going to ego trip on you, Mark, and I'm going to get in your way.
You bring up such a great point, Jeff, because you think about this and why these things don't seem to work like we think they should, and it really comes down to ego, and it really comes down to ego to say at a leadership level. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, these things are made as well as broken at a leadership level, because at that point, there is this aspect of influence, this aspect of authority that plays out. And if you have a really strong leader, someone who, to your point, Jeff, from that first part of your example, that basically says, you know what, this is your thing. I am here to support you with it. I will play cover for you. I will do whatever whatever you need, and be a servant leader essentially to you as you drive this forward. And that will build an environment where this kind of stuff thrives. And the thing you always know when you've got someone in a good spot or really a good solid leader is when you do hit that rough point, because you always will. There always is that rough point. Does that leader stay the same way? And that kind of goes into some of the ego aspect, where if they revert back and they're like, well, you know what, I know you had this, but I've got to come in and now take care of this for you. There's an ego aspect there that's playing out. But if they're like, nope, we have to all learn together. And so I'm going to help you. I'm going to coach you. You need to own this. That's where you see a really solid leader. And I think that's where a lot of the things we see is that you get, again, agile concepts like Scrum, these sorts of things. They come in at a team level and they start trying to percolate up through the organization. And there's a point where I always like to think about it where leaders say, hey, you know what? I don't care how the sausage is made. I just want the sausage at the end. But then all of a sudden, when we have to slow down in order to speed up, that slowdown, that little rough patch we usually face as we're kind of going through some organizational change, that's when they all of a sudden will perk up and say, all right, hey, things were working just fine before, even though they weren't. We're going to go back to that. And so to me, to have that leadership buy-in, if you have leadership in your organization, that has to be bought into what you're trying to do. Otherwise, you will get to a spot where this will backfire on you. And all of a sudden, you'll have people leaving with this like, boy, we tried Agile and it just didn't work. And it's something I've seen in my career where I've had really strong leaders who have played a pivotal role in allowing us to get through those barriers. And I've also had leaders who have buckled under the first set of pressure. And all of a sudden, boom, now, this was a bad thing. Why did we try this? So I think you hit on such an important point there.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's like a 360-degree view. It takes a village to solve these problems, and we could so easily get in each other's way if we don't start to work together in some capacity. I'll drop myself into a transformation leadership spot. I don't necessarily think that everybody has to do everything the same, neither. Like, some consistency's fine, but what may solve a problem for one team may not necessarily solve it for another team. So I'm not going to go global and go one-size-fits-all solution. I'm probably going to look around to some Scrum Masters and engineers and to certain developers or QA or product owners and solicit feedback and start crowdsourcing better ways to operate. I think that's what it's all about, is operating better with the people involved. And then when we find these best practices and we recognize a behavior that's a winner, like this teamwork's amazing, let's surface that teamwork. Let's explain why that teamwork worked well and what they were able to accomplish and how they were able to accomplish it, to hopefully inspire others that, well, we could do that same thing, And a lot of times that goes unnoticed too. It's just, this team did really well. They're one of the most high-performing teams we have in our organization. Let's just not say anything. Like, that's great, they're good and all, but, and I think I've seen fears too, where, well, if we do that, other people are going to want these people on other teams, or these people, maybe we should split this team up and put each one of these as a champion to how they're doing this on another team, as opposed to just surfacing, here's the best practice. This is what we've gained out of this. This is how they're doing that. You don't see that happen very often, but I think it could help a lot when these wins do happen. Let's celebrate those wins. And not artificially neither. You know what I mean? Like, let's lift it up. Let's put it out there somewhere, on a board, somewhere public where everyone could see it and hear about it at an all hands.
Yeah, I mean, you're really about creating a culture of winning. I really enjoy, there's a lot of great leaders in the hotel industry who have this understanding of real service. And I was listening to an audiobook from the gentleman who was the leader of Ritz-Carlton for a season. I believe he's retired now. But one of the things he implemented there is they have, and it's so funny because it's the hotel industry, right? So not tech. They've just got their servers, their front desk staff. This is real people-oriented stuff. And what they would do is every day at all of their different sites, they would start their day with a daily huddle. right? It's like, huh, that sounds interesting. Well, a part of that daily huddle, aside from talking about what's happening at the local hotel, this is what we're doing here. From corporate, every day, they would have some kind of a positive story from one of the hotels worldwide. Here's the way a member at this hotel thrilled one of our guests, and here's the level of service that we, as a great hotel and as a wonderful customer service entity, here's how we take care of our customers. And so what they were doing, just like you're saying, Jeff, with those wins, they are sharing, this is what we want to see. This is how we treat our people. This is our identity. You're not just working at a Ritz-Carlton and being, the busboy in the restaurant or being the luggage carrier. What I loved is, they had this clear motto and this shared understanding of how we deliver wins. This is what it looks like. And so I think, switch over to like a tech world or any sector, if we can celebrate those wins in a public way, hey, let's get you close to that feedback. If a customer was thrilled, let's look at that feedback and let's celebrate that win. If a customer was not happy, let's take a look at that, not judging, oh, you messed it up, you broke it, right? But let's actually look at that. Let's take that feedback. Let's learn from it. And then let's delight the customer on the next go. If we can become open and responsive to that feedback, the wins are just going to help us create more of the same, because it's great to win as a team. And when we can celebrate those wins, everybody knows, okay, that's what we need to do to delight our customers. Let's do more of that. And, if it's a miss, hey, we tried, came up a little bit short. Let's tweak a few things. Let's, not get stuck in the blame game or get stuck in this self-deprecating cycle. Let's just fix it and let's go at it again. Let's go out there, let's shoot some more shots, and we're going to get more shots on target. We're going to score more goals. Let's get out there and keep making it better, continuously improving, continuously learning, continuously seeking and responding to that feedback. I think that's the winning. That's the agile mindset. Like, as we're talking about, what is this? How do we do it? That's the heart of it. We want to hear that feedback. We want to respond to that feedback. It's not about your framework. It's about, at the end of the day, delivering results, both for the team so they can get better and for your customer. You got to be delivering, making and delighting your customers. That's man,
Yeah,
that's what it's about.
So funny, because as we go on and we talk about this, I'll hear we need to be open to, and it just makes me reflect on the title of this podcast so much, like open to feedback, open to removing ourselves from ego. And to talk about shipping and getting that feedback, this is the last thing that I'll kind of dive into and connect back to, why is this going wrong and what can we do to improve it. It's so hard to get over this notion that when we deliver this thing, it's only going to be good enough to go out to users if it has everything in it. Let's pack because you know what? We may never get to work on this again. We always have something new coming through the pipeline. We have to be open to get room for that fear. We have to be open to start learning how to ship smaller. Let someone use it, beta test it. Use it in the wild. Let's get feedback from those people directly, and let's iterate and make the next version of that thing better. And let's make that cycle exactly what it should be, cyclical. Let's do it again and make it better. Let's do it again and make it better. And the only way we could do that is if we ship smaller. Our measurement of success is on the delivery of working software. So let's deliver something that works, a true shippable increment. And I see so often we break it down. We'll decompose a feature into some epics, into some stories. And then by the time they get the people on the team, they become tasks. They're sub-optimized parts. So we get to the end of a sprint, and what's the sprint review or the demo about is, well, I have this story. And the story only performs this very, very small subsample of the whole. Is that story shippable software? No. How do we raise that awareness and ship that feature, ship that product? That's the key there. Let's not make it about stories. Let's swarm a feature. Let's swarm a product, get it to a state of shipping and get it there quick. And whose hands can we put it in and get feedback in. And you know what? That's an engineering problem. That's what they do in college. My brother's all about it in robotics and solving problems in the healthcare space for big health companies. Is like, I want to fix the problem. I want to make it better. You challenge me. What can make this better? And I will go and work on that, and I'll put it back in your hands and tell me if this meets the needs or not. And if not, we'll do it again to make it the best it possibly can be. And I think we have such a cultural problem with that right now of going, nope, not good enough. No, don't push. No, our customers will never buy that when it only has these 2 working parts. And our competition has 30 different features in ours. Ours can't possibly have 2. Well, guess what? When those 2 features, maybe the 2 features that crush the competition, or those 2 features are the 2 features that become the best, and maybe out of the 30 features that our competition have, 60% of them are features that end users don't even need. But we have to have parity with the competition. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sold on any of that. Thoughts?
Oh boy, there's a guy out there by the name of Fred George, and he's really kind of started what's known as like the developer anarchy, programmer anarchy movement. And,
I've seen that. I love it.
Seen his stuff, right? And
yes.
I love it. Actually, you're the one that put me onto him about a year ago. I've absolutely just gobbled everything up from him, because one of the things that he talks about is this idea of story tyranny, and this idea that we have moved into this realm where people are doing stories, and these stories are so small and so granular that all of a sudden we have lost all perspective of what we're trying to actually accomplish. And it then goes right back into this idea that, why are we disheartened by what we're doing? Why aren't we delivering the value we thought we would? Well, when you break the actual value, regardless of story or whatever, the actual value into like 15 different pieces, and then try to say, well, if you do this piece, and then you do this piece, and then you do this piece, all of a sudden you'll get value. Again, it's the forest and the trees mentality. All of a sudden I can't see a line of sight between what I'm trying to do and why I'm trying to do it. And so that's one of the things Fred George talks about, is this idea of eliminating concepts like user stories, because they have been beneficial, but they have also been very detrimental in terms of how we connect to the value we deliver. And to your point, I loved how you put it there, Jeff. It's that idea of like, let's focus on what's that thing we're actually trying to deliver? What's that piece of value? Maybe it's a feature, maybe it's something, but let's take that chunk and then talk about what's the thing that we've got to do to validate this? What's the thing we got to do to get this into the hands of a user to actually say, are we going in the right direction? Because a lot of the times we'll do all these stories, we'll do all this stuff, we'll put it out in the market, and nothing will happen. We don't make any waves, we don't make any impacts, and we did all the things right. Why didn't it happen? Well, it's because, to your point, we loaded everything up, kitchen sink and all, and we put it out there, not realizing that the original idea may have been a bad idea to begin with. Like, we never validated that in a small way beforehand. And so,
one of my favorite things that engineering teams have been doing recently, I love it, is quick proof of concepting.
Beautiful.
You know what I mean? Like, some people, well, that's a way. No, that's not. It's developing a smaller scale model to validate the theory or the hypothesis. And the principles of science and engineering is to first, here's the problem I need to solve, right? And kids even learn this in their science class. I have to develop a hypothesis. Then I'm going to develop the steps that I'm going to take in a very high level form to validate my hypothesis. Then I'm going to develop a model to see if that works. And I'm going to do it quickly. And then I'm going to go back and improve upon my hypothesis. I'm going to improve upon my steps. I'm going to iterate again. And now I'm going to deliver a solution. And that solution's not the end all be all, but it's a scientific method. It's the way that it's engineering at its finest. So let's get to something fast, even if we have to build a small scale model or a proof of concept.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting with that concept too, is that sometimes people say we have to build this thing to do it. Well, sometimes you don't. I mean, there's the concept, there's like Wizard of Ozzing, where it's this idea where, I could build something to go out there and prove an hypothesis that kind of has someone in the background, maybe pulling some levers, blowing some smoke kind of thing. But what will tell me is it'll tell me whether or not I'm going in the right direction. So I think that's what I want my teams to think about. I want my teams to not just think about the software they have to build. I want my teams to think about the problems they need to solve. And if they can think more about the problems versus the software, we're actually going to get a better solution in the end.
Totally.
Wow, that's so good. I mean, that is so good. Like, let's
I'm
not
gonna
just be out
totally
there
copyright that thing right there.
Yeah. No, let's focus on the, I mean, that's right. What are you solving today? I mean, what a great question, right? What are we actually doing that adds value, that creates some benefit? You know, don't just go out and push buttons or do code. Like, that's that engage the brain, right?
Mhm.
Think about what's the result of what I'm doing today, and is it making things better? Or am I just doing something for the sake of someone told me to, or this is the way we've always done it, or it can't be done any other way? Right? Maybe sometimes we need to challenge some of those thoughts. And honestly, it's about finding the best path, right? That's why I think the name of our group, right, the Coaching Agile Journeys group, is so great. It's not about get from I don't know anything about Agile to becoming a certified Agile coach, right?
Coaching
That is
Agile
not
destination. That's
yeah,
not what we're doing.
no, not at all. I mean, this thing is a journey.
Mhm.
And like we said at the very beginning, you know, if you're willing to commit to, hey, I'm going to commit to the journey because I feel like the journey's worthwhile, and I'm going to enjoy the journey, and I'm going to find some people to go on the journey with me, and I'm going to have that experience. That, I think, is where the greatest learning comes from. That's where the aha moments come from that are going to transcend simply just I'm going to solve this one problem like this. No, it's a framework, a way of thinking that changes the shape of how you look at the problems. And like you said, you know, we're not just doing steps. We got to figure out what problem am I solving today with this thing I'm doing right now. And I think when you get that mindset, like, you all of a sudden start creating ridiculous levels of value that, of course, the market is going to appreciate, right? And they're going to value. Customers like it when you solve their problems. Surprise, surprise, right?
Who would
So,
have thought?
so you know,
And they'll
there's
pay
that,
for it too.
so there's that thing that people normally say, wait for it. Wait
Uh-oh.
for it, you know, and they want you to hang around to the end. Well, I'm about ready to drop a bomb on this whole entire thing and send us off in a very major way. But here's the best thing, folks. We've been at this for an hour, and this is it. This is where most people's knowledge does not connect to understanding. But in this full hour that I've been going forward with these two leaders, and this is why I enjoy and love this leadership group, a full hour, wait for it, we did not use framework, Scrum, Kanban. We did not crack an egg about process. We talked about the Agile mindset. We talked about engineering culture. We talked about solving problems. We talked about connecting with users. We talked about getting to the root and breaking through ego and leaving ego aside. We talked about flattening cultures and using people's brains. We talked about recruiting and getting people through the door that are smart ones and keeping them there. We did not talk frameworks. We talked Agile, folks, and I will leave that right there. Boom. That was the mic that just dropped. And these two guys are two of the best that I know, and I appreciate them so much. So we're going to leave you with this. I'm going to have Isaac and Mark each leave you with some sort of a word of encouragement. I mean, we just basically hammered so much in this one episode, this long episode, but I'm sure Isaac and Mark have one more in their memory bank that they could say, people, when you set out this week on this journey, after everything we talked about, this is the one thing that I can encourage you to help you get results in Agile and deter that negative mindset of those around you. Mark, I'll start with you.
So I figured it's a good time for this quote because it's March Madness right now. You know, we got the NCAA tournament going on, so probably already all heard it. You know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So for me with that is, and my encouragement to everyone out there, experiment. We can use Scrum, you can use Kanban, but approach it from an experiment. What are you trying to accomplish? Even if it's a little thing, if you're going through your day-to-day on your team, let's say you're on a scrum team, let's say you're like, well, just not feeling like I'm getting value out of it. Think of an experiment that you think will get you one step closer to your customer. Maybe reduce that latency a little bit. Maybe actually help you focus more on a problem versus a story. What's an experiment you can run? Quick, easy, something you can do within the iteration that allow you to see if you can move the ball one step closer. That'll be one more shot that you make. So that's where I'll leave you with.
That's a great one. Thanks, Mark. Isaac, do you have one?
I do, and I thought of this quote when we started this whole talk, and so I'll just say this. Dale Carnegie is cited as the beginner of this quote, but he said, "Those convinced against their will are of the same opinion still." When you're really having these discussions, when you're trying to promote this agile mindset and this different way of thinking and this culture shift, you know what? There is a interchange that needs to happen in the people you're working with. And let me give you this piece of advice. I strongly recommend this practice. If you're a coach, if you're an agilist, if you're just someone who has to deal with people, don't be afraid to take a breath. I think often we have our answers ready. We are level one listening. We just jump back in and give a quick response. You know what? Take a beat. Step back for 1 second. If you need to literally just tell yourself, hold on, just breathe real quick. Slow down the pace of the conversation. Step back and don't just respond to the first thing that comes to your mind. This week, if you encounter, someone who's challenging, well, it's not going to work, or this isn't that way, or agile is terrible, or this or that. Don't just shoot back a response. Take a big, deep breath and pause for just a second and let yourself really prepare a good response. Because we're not just about, let's just get out there and argue our case better than someone else. We're in it, all of us as agilists on this agile journey, we are in it to try to add value and ultimately to serve the teams and the organizations that we're around. That's really what we're about. We want to help those improve. So take that breath, take that 1 second this week when you encounter that challenge, or someone pushes on you, or you've got a team that's maybe having some conflict, or you don't know what to say. Take a big deep breath, slow it down a little bit, and then come in with the best wisdom you've got at the time, and realize this: it's all a learning journey. We are not all there. Even as great as this conversation has been, we're not experts. We're not claiming to have arrived and planted the flag. It's all a learning journey. So take your time, give a good, wise response, and always be willing and open to hear that feedback. And if you don't give the right response the first time, you know what? Next time that question comes around, you'll be wiser and you'll be ready to give a better response the next time. So that's my advice for this week, man. Just slow it down. If you get yourself in a tight spot or an arguing spot, don't get out there. Don't bring the gloves up. Don't start throwing punches. Take a big, deep breath and then decide, where do we go from here? What's the wisest path forward? So I'd encourage you all to try that.
Thanks. And now that you guys use quotes, and I've used a quote every show somewhere, somehow, so it's a great theme, I'll leave with one and a little bit of advice. Every problem is a gift. Without them, we wouldn't grow. Plain and simple, Tony Robbins. And if we got a problem that is in front of us, and that's what I usually like to say, don't look at them like developers, engineers. Here's the problem that we're trying to solve for our end user, or this very, very specific persona-driven end user. And this is what the problem is. And let's grow together. Let's collaborate on it. Let's solve. Let's deliver small. Let's develop that proof of concept, and definitely try to employ that use of the scientific method to solve that problem quickly and solve it with a team of people and get to that answer. So thanks everybody for joining us. This has been a great, great episode. I thank Isaac and Mark so much for being here, and hopefully you could take something away, and please contact the show and let us know what you think. Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this. It is true, Agile is not a process, and it's most certainly not just a series or an umbrella of frameworks. Real agility is being able to be quick, nimble, and responsive to change while minimizing chaos and churn as much as possible. Agile is about quick delivery, feedback loops, and engaging the end users to deliver the optimum value. No matter what that product is, in the innovative space, we want to cater to users and deliver optimum value quickly and by being nimble and the ability to respond and embrace changes. Agile is truly about solving problems, collaborating, and learning. Optimize, improve, be agile. And please share this, which is the reality of what Agile really is. Our next episode is for all the beginners out there. So if you're new and you want to get off to a good start in your Agile career, be sure to come back when we publish that one. Until next time, Agile on, my friends. To learn more or to contact us, visit www.coachingagilejourneys.com.